I just want to do God's will.
The kind of revolution that the world needs is a Christian revolution.
If you want a miracle, you've got to expect it to happen.
You are the recipients of God's grace and God's blessings, and you rejoice in that reality.
Welcome to Life Today Live. Hey, man, we hit a lot of heavy topics and a lot of great stuff, a lot of good information, but you know, I love the ones where I get to talk music and movies, and today's one of those music shows. If you are a fan of the Jason Lovins band, then Jason's Lovin' Band. I just made up something really awesome. You should just, all right, I want a nickel off of every Jason's Lovin' Band album. So anyway,
got it.
The Jason Lovins Band. You fans, you know, the rest of you, you're about to find out the man, Jason Lovins himself. And then you can go check out the music. We'll tell you where to get that, because there is a new album that is dropping in February here called Pilgrim Road. You can pre-order it now at the website, jasonlovins.com. Singles are hitting wherever you're hearing your music. If you don't have Jason Lovins in the playlist, following on Spotify, whatever you do, right? You'll want to check it out. But right now, hang on. You get the music later. I want you to meet the guy. There he is again, Jason Lovins. Welcome to Life Today Live.
Hey, man, thank you so much. Honored to be here.
So, I mean, we'll talk album, but there's you got so much of a story. That's really why it's fun to sit down and talk to you. But, I mean, how excited for the new album are you?
We are. We're so excited. This is technically my 11th album over all these years. You just can't even dream that far, you know. But I'm so excited because I feel like it's one of the best things we've ever done. So pretty excited.
All right. Well, I heard one of the singles was from the new album, right? That I listened to. I listened to a bunch of them.
Yeah.
So people can go check out music like as soon as we're done chatting, and get into it, and then pre-order the whole thing. All right. That's the album promotion, and I mention it because Jason's been doing, like he says, the music for so long. They're actually getting good at it now, which is really good.
Yeah, it's
for people.
Who knew?
A little practice makes perfect. For people that don't know you, though, what would you say from a musical standpoint as well as from a message standpoint? What's the Jason Lovins Band about?
That's a great question. You know, we only ever really set out on this to become a worship band. I mean, that's really how it happened, and if we've ever done anything consistently over all these years, is we've really done that. I mean, we've set out to just lead worship and facilitate these worship experiences, whatever that may look like. And for us, it's pretty cool because one week we might be doing a youth event and there's a few thousand kids, and then the next week we might be doing a senior citizen banquet with a bunch of older people, and we do a bunch of old hymns, and it's kind of been everything like that in between. And so we've kind of become that band that is known as a band that could come in and do a blend. I mean, we're always going to do some old songs. We're always going to throw in some new songs, and then we'll slide in a few of ours. And that's kind of what we've become. And it's been pretty neat because it's got us in a few places that would never even have a band usually. And so it's pretty cool.
What's your favorite hymn?
Oh gosh, I have a few. Amazing Grace is always going to be the standard for me because my grandma, that was always her go-to song, and she very much understood what she was singing about.
Yeah.
But man, I got a list of them. We've actually done 3 hymns albums over the years.
Oh yeah.
And so I got a handful of that.
Yeah. Okay. Really... So being a West Virginia boy, now living in Kentucky, you got some pretty good bluegrass roots going on there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a bluegrass picker by any means, but just this whole Appalachian heritage that I have, the older I get, the more it means to me, you know.
Yeah.
I grew up singing like out of the old Redback Church hymnal, and then like all the old gospel mountain, I call them mountain songs because there's a few songs that came out of these mountains that, some of the guys in my band had never heard before, or even my guys, we all come from so many different places, and it's pretty neat how the Lord has kind of put that together. But yeah, I mean, it's I mean, we're hillbillies, and I'm probably more proud of that than ever. But it's really is where we come from, you know.
I do know. In fact, I've spent in recent years, since I discovered some of my ancestry being adopted, I didn't know for a long time, and exploring or knocking around Ireland several times,
Yeah.
and then watching the music and going, oh my goodness.
Yes.
You're hillbillies up in the hills. That Ireland and Scotland are very influential musically, and you can
Absolutely.
see it when you start going in some of those Irish pubs and listen to a little trad music, But
Yeah, it's you know, I am. I'm the older I get, the more I travel, the more proud I am of where I
love
come
it,
from.
love it. Okay, well, okay, and that's the other part of your story is where you come from.
Yeah.
Man, God's brought you some places. Give people,
Yeah,
yeah, give
he
people a
really
little
has.
idea of what it took to get you here.
Sure. I never talked about my story as a kid growing up. I remember lying to people in elementary, in middle school, telling them that my dad lived in California because I was good enough at geography to know that was really far away. And I just thought it was easier to do that because even at that age, I understood that I had it good. My wife would tell you I was very spoiled. I don't know that I agree with that, but she thinks I was. But I had it so good and I was so loved. And anytime anybody would hear my story, the immediate response was like, "Oh, you poor kid," you know. And I remember thinking like, "Wait a minute, like I got it pretty good," you know. And so it wasn't even until I started this band in college a little over 20 years ago that I started sharing my story. And we were in front of a little tiny church in Eastern Kentucky one night, and I just started talking. And first time I'd ever shared it in front of anybody. And the pastor came to me afterwards, and he said, "I don't think you understand what God's going to do with your life, but you got to promise me that you'll keep sharing your story everywhere you go." And I did, and I have, and I now see that God has put us um, in places that this hillbilly kid from West Virginia probably had no business being at, but yet somehow he just would continue to open these doors. And I know a lot of it is because I was willing to share that. And if you don't know, my story is this: my mom, at 15 years old, she was raped walking home from the pool one day. Didn't remember it. Months went on. I remember as a kid when they told me this, processing like, wait a minute, like I understand how bad this is. How do you not remember that? You know, and I've had lots of people tell me that when something so traumatic like that happens, that your mind can block it out. And
Mhm.
so my mom just didn't remember it. And my grandma had four other kids she was chasing around, and she said, "Your mom was my good kid." And she said, "I completely missed it." And so my mom will tell you she was very naive for 15. She didn't understand anything about babies. And so she told my grandma one day, "I'm sick. I need to go to the doctor." And my grandma said, "Yeah, she's gained weight. We should take her to the doctor and see what the doctor says." And so they did. And the doctor come out and said, "Well, she's pregnant."
Mhm.
And I always tell people after the initial shock wore off, the best way I know to explain it to people is exactly what my grandma told me. And she said, "I knew in that moment we needed to go to church and we needed to pray." So they called people in, and they went to church that night. And I tell people my grandma understood how big God is, and she believed that He is so big that He was not surprised by me. Because we always think that when bad things happen. And my grandma very much believed these things in the Bible, that He formed me in my mother's womb, that He had plans for me. She believed it with all of her heart. And so for her and her 15-year-old daughter, they had some choices that they had to make. And one of the best things I heard recently, he actually said, you know, with your mother's courage and your grandmother's guidance, you were able to be where you're at. And so for my grandma and her 15-year-old daughter, I'm very thankful that abortion was not going to be an option. They immediately started the plan of adoption. That was kind of the plan until my mom heard my heartbeat. And that changed everything. And she told my grandma, "I want to keep this baby." And I tell people, I know that my 15-year-old mama had no idea what she was getting into.
Yeah.
But my grandma did. And she said, "Okay, if that's what you want to do, that's what we're going to do." And so my mom had me. She turned 16 a couple of months later, and they went on about life as normal as life could be. I mean, my earliest childhood memory is my third birthday, and it happened to be my mom's high school graduation. So anytime our band is on the road, I share that picture when I'm telling my story. And this is what I tell people. My family made it clear to me at a young age that, you know what, you don't have a dad. We don't even know who it is. But you have a heavenly Father who loves you more than you'll ever know, and would just continue to remind me of that over and over and over. And I've had the privilege all these years to just tell people that, you know what, it's always been enough, because that's how big God is. And I came to understand that at a young age, and so very thankful for that. And I've had the opportunity to share that just literally everywhere that we've gone. We're on the road about 40 weeks a year on average, mostly weekends, but we stay very busy, and God has just continued to open these doors, and we're able to share that everywhere we go. And it's been the most amazing journey. I could tell you a million stories of how God's used it. So it's pretty cool.
I bet. I mean, you no way for you to know this unless you've watched some other shows, but I am the result of an unplanned pregnancy, or unwanted pregnancy, frankly. Definitely the unplanned child, and my mother did not choose abortion. It wasn't quite legal. I'm that old, but she could have gotten it, but it's never an option. And I found her when I was 25, and it's a long story. I found my biological father when I was 48.
Wow.
And there was some trauma, and it's disruptive, but I never had, because of my parents, James and Betty Robinson, and their explanation of us, we are all adopted as sons and daughters of God, that Heavenly Father connection. I never suffered what a lot of adoptees would suffer, which is issues of abandonment, feeling unwanted, things like that. And I just love that you're out there saying, hey, look, I'm in that boat. No choice of mine, no choice of my own, my mother's. But love overcame it, and I got a Heavenly Father who's perfect, so I ain't worried about it.
And that's really been the message. And now, because of all the stories that I have, I now see that God did have a plan.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to wrap your head around sometimes, because if I believe God is who he is, then he's big enough to keep bad things from happening to us.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the case, then he's also big enough to allow us to go through some deep, dark valleys. And we don't understand that. But yet somehow he is who he is. And when you come to understand that, we have a song called Constant, and that's the one thing, the theme of the song is, even in your deepest, darkest valley, even on your highest mountaintop, God is constant, and he is the same. And when you can understand that, you can say, God, you're so great, and you're great either way. And that's really been the theme of this whole album, which is so cool that God orchestrated it the way he did. And so that's been our message.
And, I look at it, adultery is obviously not God's plan. It's sin, in my case. Rape, obviously not God's plan. It's sin, in your case. It's not a miracle for God to make all good things work together for good. It's a miracle that he can take all the worst things and somehow make something good out of it. That's the beauty of that verse. And it's those who love him and are called according to his purpose, which he's calling you, by the way. If you're like Jason or I, and your past is a kind of ugly or imperfect or whatever, traumatic perhaps, God's still calling you out of that, and he's got a plan for you, man. Jason, let me ask you this, because I mean, you broached the topic one night at a small church, and you said, okay, I'll keep telling, and you kept telling, and you're seeing results. What has that done for you in telling that story of crime and trauma and yet heroism on the part of your mother and grandmother? I mean, what has it done for you personally?
Well, I always tell people, because so many people assume that this is hard for me to talk about. And I tell them, I said, listen, I missed the hard part. I didn't go through that. I'll tell you, one of the main stories in the very beginning of this band, we were at a camp and we met this little girl who was 16. We found out she had an 8-month-old child. And I immediately thought of the time, the age difference
Yeah.
of my mom and I. And I thought, man, I really need to talk to this girl. And they made a way for me to sit down with her and her youth leaders. And I just felt like I needed to share my story with her before I shared it with the whole camp of several hundred kids,
Gotcha.
right?
Yeah.
And I did, and I found out that her story and my mom's story were almost identical. She was assaulted walking home from school one day, didn't know who it was, and her parents were helping her raise this kid. And her story and my mom's were so parallel that it really kind of scared me.
Sure.
Like, wait,
Whoa, right.
But
Right.
in that moment, I realized that little girl, all she needed to know was there was somebody else in this world who had been through exactly what she was going through, and that they had made it. Right. When I saw that happen right before my eyes, I knew in that moment that God had this figured out, and all I had to do was just keep telling the story, because he's big enough to rest, right?
I love it.
And there's been so many stories like that, and so it's humbling. I had one time where I had been to this same church multiple times, and I thought, well, they know my story, I'm not going to tell it anymore. And the last night we were there, I was so convicted. I was like, guys, you guys know me, I've been coming here for years. I have not shared my story yet, but I promised the Lord I would do this, and I need to hold to that promise. And so I did. And there was one girl that came to me afterwards. She said, I'm 19 years old, and I need you to know that was for me. And
Yeah.
she said, I've never heard you before. And she said that, and she told me her story. It was so tragic. She had already aborted one baby, and she was pregnant in that moment. She said, and I didn't know what I was going to do. But now, after hearing your story, I know now what I'm supposed to do. And do you think this church would help me? And I said, honey, absolutely. I know these people. They will walk through this with you. And they did. And so just, you just feel so small in that moment. But God really reminded me that, hey, this is why I keep you out on the road. So you keep doing what you're doing, and I'll do the rest. And he has, because we don't have a booking agent. I mean, we literally do all this ourselves, and God has just done it. And that's been just the coolest thing.
Have you met that baby yet?
I have not, but the little girl from the camp all those years ago,
Yeah.
we got to keep in touch with her. She ended up getting married, having more kids, and living happily ever after. And getting to watch that, even from afar on Facebook,
Right.
when
Right. Right.
it was just the greatest blessing.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah, man, I can't tell you how much I appreciate just you being willing to talk about it and going into all these places, not caring. It's interesting because you're thinking, sometimes you might think, I've been here, these people have heard my story. You're thinking about the 99, and Jesus is thinking about the one.
That's right. Yeah, it's so true.
And I love that you're doing that. Okay, I want to show people your website real quick. This is jasonlovins.com. If you're listening and not watching, it's Jason, Lovins.com. You got tour dates. Check that out.
Yep.
You got some merch, and you got the singles, and of course the album Pilgrim Road. You can pre-order right now. You'll get it later in February. And you got to I got to ask, what's the Pilgrim Road?
Yeah, so that song came. This a friend of mine, he's a young worship pastor. He called me one day. He knew that we did hymns, and he said, "Hey, I think I'm writing a hymn. Can you help me finish it?" And I said, "Are you sure?" Because he's like 20 years old, and he sent it to me, and I said, "Wow, you really are onto something here." And so it is truly a hymn with just verses and refrains, and it truly shares the gospel from Genesis all the way to Revelation, and just reminding us of the journey that we're on, and where we're headed, and we did not want to call the album that, because the song was already out as a single, but it just felt right, because it really does remind us of the journey that we're on, and so just thankful. I mean, the older I get, the longer we do this, the more I think about that. Is I'm so thankful for the journey, and what a road it's been, and then again, just all that we know that's ahead of us.
Yeah.
So just very thankful.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Great music. Good times. Wonderful story. By the way, if somebody's watching this, Jason, and they're like, man, that guy would be great at my insert event here. They reach out and get a hold of you guys? You say you don't have an agent. How do they get a hold of you?
They go straight to our website. There's a booking tab right there on the website, or they can follow us on all the social media. If you look up Jason Lovins Band, you'll find us. And we really do. We handle all of our booking in-house, and so they'll talk to me directly. And like I said, we average about 40 weeks a year on the road, and mostly weekends. So we're in a different church just about every week. But we still have several dates this year open that we're ready to book. So that's our heart. We're just going to keep doing what we're doing and share our story and see where the Lord leads.
And make some good music while you're doing it.
We try our best.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, you guys are great. That's great. Wow. Okay. There you go. Now you know. If you go check out check out the website, and follow him. Do the things that help the artist. By the way, buy the music. Don't just steal it or just listen to it. Follow them, like it's what I do on Spotify. I know it helps. It puts them in their rotation, which builds all that kind of stuff. So go out and support Jason. And if you've got an event where you need a good band and you like some good music, maybe some hymns thrown in there, Jason Lovins is your guy. Man, anything? Miss anything? Sorry, I can't talk. Did you get it all?
I think that's it. I mean, anytime they follow us on social media, like you said, and share what we're doing, and then adding our songs to their playlist, if they're into digital music, it helps us so much. And just happy to do it.
Appreciate you, man. Keep sharing that story. I love it. Very close to my heart. I love it. So I appreciate you doing it.
An honor to meet you as well.
Absolutely, man. All you guys out there watching, we appreciate you watching today. If you haven't liked, followed, or subscribed to Life Today TV, we would invite you to do that. You get more notifications of great interviews like this one. And, of course, if you want to share this with somebody, hit that share button and say, hey, check this guy out. Now, we're done. Go to wherever you like to get your music. Go to YouTube. You can watch some of his videos. Jason Lovins. Check out the music and come back. We'll see you again next time here on Life Today Live.
Thank you, brother.
I love you.